foods. And this is something that is quite possibly perhaps one of the most underrated things that when I talk to clients or people might not think that this is such an important thing. The thing is, if we don't know how we're communicating with our child at meal times, we're really setting ourselves up to be highly unsuccessful. And the reason for that is because we talk about pressuring our kids, and the more you pressure your child, the more they're not going to want to eat the food. Because if I was to put something absolutely grotesque in front of you and I said, you have to eat it, you can't leave the table until you've had 3 bites, that's most likely going to bring up some anxiety for you. And that's exactly what's going to happen with your child. And also, if you do try the thing because I told you, oh, look, you're just not going to be able to have cake if you don't try this absolutely disgusting, lamb's brain or sheep's heart or whatever it is, it's not going to, even if you do try it, you're not going to want to try it. And so when we talk about pressure, all of that pressure comes from how we communicate. Whether it's you asking your child to take 3 bites, that's communication. If you're staring at your child's plate, that's also communication. It's non-verbal communication, but it's still communication. I was on a discovery call with a mum earlier in the week who was telling me that she's implemented a lot of the strategies. She's taken my course, but she still needs some more help. And she was saying, I just I put the food down, I make it as fun as I can, and then I just kind of don't know what to do afterwards. And when we just put the food down in front of the kid and we sort of don't do anything more than that, we're really setting ourselves up to fail, because we're missing all these other opportunities to have conversations with our child about the food. And that's really where communication really comes into play. So I did a live a couple of maybe a month ago where I was at my friend's house and I helped her child, who's 5 years old and is neurodivergent. I helped him try salsa and guacamole for the first time. And as I was going through that on the live, someone had commented, oh, like how interesting that was. And ultimately, we need to sort of switch the goalposts here. The goal is not that your child actually eats the guacamole and salsa, because, that's look at that as bonus points. Those are bonus points. If your child is willing to taste it, that's really the goal. We want our child to be willing to try the thing. That's what almost every parent with a picky eater will tell me. My child is very rigid. They refuse to try things. They don't want foods on their plate. They just don't want to try anything. And almost always that's because they've been pressured in the past. If you came to the table and sat down with me every time you ate a meal and I was telling you, you need to try this, you need to eat it, you're going to like it, it's yummy, but you think it's disgusting, you're going to come to the table knowing I'm going to pressure you, it's not going to be enjoyable. You would immediately tell me, I'm not trying that. I'm not trying it. I don't want anything to do with that. And that's a very normal response. And when our children give us this response, we as the parent don't like that because we've spent all this time making this meal. So when we're really trying to tap into what can engage our child and what makes them want to eat something, or what makes them want to try something, a huge part of that comes from the way we talk to them, from the way we understanding what they're saying. If your child says they don't want to try something, there's usually two kinds of parents. There's one, the parent that will just say, oh, okay, that's fine, don't worry about it, and then nothing. Or you've got the parent that says, oh, that's not okay, you absolutely have to try this, I've worked so hard to make it for you, it's delicious, it's yummy, it's all these things. So all of that is communication. If you drop out and stop, and you're the first parent who's like, okay, I don't want to pressure, so I'm just going to say that's totally fine, and then I just leave it there, you're missing a lot of opportunities to engage your child and to speak to them about, let's lean into this, and what's is there a reason, or does it look different, or yeah, this is a new food, I haven't made this before, I wonder what it tastes like, or I wonder if it's going to be crunchy or sweet or whatever. And if you're the parent on the other side who is saying, oh, I've worked really hard, like it's yummy, you're going to like it, you just have to try it, that is absolutely pressuring, and it's also guilting. And as somebody, I worked with my first adult client at the start of this year, and what was really interesting about that was he grew up with parents that did tell him, constantly things that made him feel guilty and shame for not eating the food. And there was a large part of that we had to work through together. So I'm going to open this up now to questions, comments. We can have a little bit of a chat. I've got a little bit more time before I've got to go for my client call. I've got a question on Instagram from Maggie. Lately, I've been able to get my son to try, fun food toothpicks, but immediately I don't like it. Any more tips? I'll be like, oh, okay, I really like it. I really like it's creamy and red and yummy, but no. So Maggie, and to anybody here, I might put a lightning poll up on TikTok because I'm curious how many people say things like yummy. So I'm going to do a quick poll. Okay. If you say, the poll I'm putting up on TikTok is, if you say yummy, or let's just go with that. If you say yummy, select the smiley face. And if you don't describe things as yummy, select the crying face. If you're on Instagram, you can just let me know. If you can just put in yes as a comment. Do you, or no, do you use the word yummy to describe foods? Because I'm going to tell you about why I don't recommend you do that. So, all right, I've got 3 people on Instagram who are giving me the big smile, which means they do describe foods as yummy. I'm curious on Instagram, do you describe foods as yummy? Just let me know yes or no. I'm just typing it in. I've got 1 no, but I'm getting quite a few yeses on TikTok. So going back to this question, the food pics, great idea. It's a really fun and different way to interact with the food. So that's a great way to bring fun and something nuanced to the table. And I think it's also fine what you've said here, that you've gone on to describe what you've described: creamy and red and yummy. So creamy red, great, helping build their understanding of what they're actually tasting. When they immediately say they don't like it, it's almost always, okay, I've had more people say that they use the word yummy. So your action item today is, if you go away with learning nothing else from this live, is just stop saying the word yummy, because it really describes nothing. It's actually quite biased, and it actually is a form of pressure. Imagine if I'm sitting down here and I'm eating, think of the most disgusting thing you can think of that you would not want to put in your mouth. If you're a vegetarian, maybe it's meat. If you're not a vegetarian, maybe it's like pig intestines or something. And I'm telling you, oh, it's yummy. Oh, it's really yummy. You're going to love it. That's pressure. That's absolutely pressure. So I want to try to avoid those very biased words, like it's yummy or you'll like it and that type of thing. So that's for the first part. So if your child is saying that they don't like something, that's very closed-minded. Like, it's very finite. I don't like it. So I would try to stretch them first. And again, this is communication. I would stretch them and say, I'd rephrase it. The easiest thing to say is, oh, you don't like it yet. But the other things that you can ask more questions. You can, okay, a few people have said yes, no. Okay, so you can ask more questions like, oh, what was your experience with it? Did it taste creamy to you? Does it taste like, if maybe, I don't know, depending what it was, if it was something that had multiple different colors, you mentioned that it was red, you could ask, did the white one taste any different than the red one? Or like, it's just interesting to continue this conversation further, because you can be the parent that says, oh, okay, and then just not say anything more, but you're really missing an opportunity to further the conversation. What was it? Did you find yours creamy as well? Did you find it sweet? Did you find it sour? Was it crunchy? Was it, whatever? And if you're the parent on the other side of it, if the child says they don't like it, you can say, oh, like, what a lot of parents will do is try to fight that and oppose the child, like, oh, I think it's really nice. And so you can very much like get into this imbalance and battle of, when your child says they don't like it, oh, but you liked it yesterday, or oh, but you like creamy things, or oh, you like crunchy things. So you can engage in this battle with them, which is, again, I would say, a less useful way to communicate with them. So it's not something that I would suggest doing. Maggie, so eye-opening. Thanks so much. I'll try these suggestions. This happened to be a tortellini in red sauce. Okay, so did he eat the tortellini, or what was it that he said was that he didn't like? I'm curious if it was the sauce, if it was the tortellini. Like, even within the tortellini, there's something on the inside. There's also the pasta on the outside, so it could be like it could have been a few things that they either did eat or didn't want to eat. So I'm curious there. If you've got other questions about communicating, or something that you might be doing with your child. Yesterday, in my small coaching group, we were talking. We like really changed a few things up, and I had one parent, like all the parents in the group, they're very receptive. They're there because they want to try new things. And one mum even said to me, if it involves getting up in an apron and doing a silly dance, I will do that too. So we're kind of flipping things around this week at home. And one of the parents was sort of afraid to do that. She said, oh, if I do that, I'm really worried that my child isn't going to eat anything, because she is quite an extreme picky eater already. Only has about 8 or 9 foods that she will eat. And mum was like, okay, I really want to do this, but I'm a little wary of doing that because I'm worried that she's going to completely skip the meal. And the goal is never to have a child go hungry. The goal is never that the child doesn't eat the meal. Absolutely not. So what I did was, we talked about, all right, how do we approach this with the child before we get to the meal where we're actually doing and implementing? Because we need kids to know, kids thrive on predictability. They thrive on routine, and that's a really good thing for them. So we need to take the time to explore this with them before it's something that is shoved in their faces as something completely new. And that's really where we're preparing the child ahead of time, rather than, like, let's say we're giving them tortellini for the first time, in a red sauce. If we just give that to them and it's brand new and it's in front of their face for the first time, that can be quite a jarring experience, where they're a child who's going to say, like, oh, I've got nothing to eat. Like, this is almost panic mode. And if we can talk to them about it beforehand, it could be the day before, it could be the morning before. There are lots of different ways that you can do it. Show them a picture of the recipe, get them involved in the kitchen, like, so many different things. But approaching this with them before it is, like, right in front of them, so that it doesn't, freak them out. That's the whole point here. He went on to eat his cantaloupe and bread, and thankfully did not make me remove the disliked tortellini. Pasta is not a safe food. Trying lots of shapes. Okay, it's really great that you're trying different shapes. Just a really quick tip is take him to the supermarket with you and have him pick the pasta that he would like, that he finds the most interesting, and cook that together at home. And it's great that you're serving reliable foods with it. Little Afro says, I bought your course. I have gotten overwhelmed how to start implementing change. For example, my son currently eats exclusively mac and cheese, chicken nuggets, and chips. He recently started refusing to eat anything at daycare. Wow, I'm not surprised you're feeling overwhelmed. That's really a very narrow list of foods that your child is eating. How old is your child? I'm guessing, since he's at daycare, he's probably like 2 or 3, or 1.5, 2 or 3. What have you tried to implement? He's 3.5. He will also eat French fries. Okay. So do you find yourself at the moment that you're giving him only the foods that he will eat? Are you, like, where are you sort of at with what you've started to implement? So don't, like, it does feel very overwhelming, because not only are you trying to go ahead and try something new and try a different approach, you've also got a child who's not eating very much. And now, if they're not eating at daycare, no doubt you've got the daycare people saying, oh, this is a problem, and you already know that it's a problem. So it's stressful and overwhelming. We've started adding one new food with the safe food, but he politely refuses. No tantrums. He says, I don't like that, and won't touch it. Okay, so you're adding a new food with the safe food. Okay. Is he also getting the same meal that you're getting, that you're making for yourself? And when he says he doesn't like that, were you here when we were talking a little bit earlier about some of the other ways that you can kind of stretch that? Like, you don't like it yet, or you're still learning, or maybe it's just saying it's the first time that they've tried this, so it's maybe not a surprise that they're still getting used to it, or it's not their favorite. There's a lot of different ways that you can sort of phrase that, because I don't like it in and of itself is a very closed statement. It's very finite. It's very definite. It's very closed. It doesn't show room to grow, room to change, which is what we want to start imparting on kids. In my like when I work privately with clients, I've got some kids who also say that, or I won't eat that till I'm 9. I'm like the new client that I'm starting with today after this live. Her daughter is 9, and she's for the longest time said things like, "Oh, I'm not going to try that till I'm 10, or I'm not going to try that till this, or I don't like that." It's all very closed, and a lot of these kids tend to have similar patterns that they tend to be quite rigid, and we need to work on their flexibility. That's something that I talk about a lot in terms of, like, if I've got a child who's only eating chips, like I've got one kid at the moment who is only eating chips from McDonald's. And that's actually something that they're working on. They've fixed all their communication issues, and he's no longer having tantrums and that type of thing. And we're starting to help him move towards eating potatoes. This is like our big first challenge for him, because he will only eat the chips at McDonald's. And that's an example of not being flexible. It's an example of quite extreme rigidity. So you said he won't touch your food at all. So do you put it on his plate and he just like politely refuses, like you said, and will just eat the reliable foods? You're probably at the point in the course where we talked about like what a respectful plate looks like, and how to set yourselves up for success so that you're only giving technically one meal. I've got to wait for you to reply. It's always nice to have a conversation like this. We haven't been putting it on his plate. We used to before the course, but have been so desperate. I'd get back to putting it on the plate. We've been just feeding him his plate separately. I'd get back to putting it on the plate with the food that you are offering him, because if he doesn't have that sort of direct exposure to it, it becomes that he's eating a separate meal, where we want it to appear that you're all eating the same meal. Are you at the point in the course where we've talked about how to get them involved in the kitchen and changing the communication? Because in many ways, changing the communication is it's the foundation. It's almost more important than anything that you feed them. Because if you're still pressuring, or a lot of subtle pressure, it's still like I said, I've said this quite a lot of times. Like I've not ever worked with a client who is not pressuring at all. There's always subtle pressure still there, even if they've removed the big things like, oh, you've got to try this, or you have to have 3 bites and whatnot. But completely removing the pressure and changing the communication, because that's something that you're in control of, and that will serve you as you continue to try with more exposures. So yes, he loves helping to cook. It's one of his favorite things, but it doesn't seem to translate to, I'm guessing, to the table. Will he attempt to try things while he is prepping with you? Oh, it doesn't. Oh, that doesn't translate to him trying the food that you make. My husband used to make him eat 1 bite or go to bed hungry, so we are working on undoing bad habits, which does take time. I will say, so I'm working with like an extreme, like diagnosed child that has ARFID, which is avoidant restrictive food intake disorder, and there's an extreme amount of anxiety for those children. And it wasn't until it was about the first month that we worked together on removing all forms of pressure and absolutely changing the way they communicate at meal times. This child was having a huge meltdown like 6 out of 7 nights a week. Now it's like maybe 1, occasionally 1. Like it's not routinely once a week. It's like less than once a week. And in large part, that was because of the way that they changed their communication. So let yourself walk away with knowing that there's a lot of things that you can do here that you are in control of. You're not in control of whether or not your child tries a bite. You are in control of how do you talk to your child about the food? Are you going to pressure them? Are you going to say this is yummy? Are you going to force them to try a bite? Are you going to just accept when they say they don't like something? Or are you going to take that a couple of steps further and delve into it a little bit deeper? So working on undoing those bad habits in and of itself is quite a substantial part of what you've got to start doing. And in the meantime, you are still feeding your kid 3 to 5 times a day. So really honing into, how am I communicating with them? Am I feeling relaxed? In the course, if you haven't gotten to the part yet with some of the mindset exercises, I think they're early on. They're in like module 2 or 3, I think, about catching your comments. Go back and go through that with your husband. I think the two of you would find that to be very interesting to work on it together. What about kids using food as a control thing? My daughter refuses to eat most food now. Yeah, absolutely. So children can control when they sleep, what they eat, what they put in their mouths, what they chew and swallow, and if they go to the toilet. Those are the things that children can control. So yes, that's why picky eating becomes an issue, is because parents are battling for control with the child, and the child is at the point where that's how they assert their autonomy. That's how they can protest, I suppose. So how we respond to that, again, communication, the way we respond to it is so incredibly important. If we start battling them, we are giving up our control. We're showing them, yep, this is absolutely something that I am very distressed about, and I am telling you, I want you to eat this food. You have to eat it. I've had parents that are chasing their children around with a spoon, like literally around the room, because their child is running off and playing with this toy or that toy, and the parent's so desperate for them to eat, they're literally chasing them around with a spoon. And that is very much what we don't want to do. Even that is very much a form of communication. It is communicating to the child, this stresses me the fuck out, and I'm not okay with you saying no. And that gives the child even more control as we relinquish our own control, which is not what we want to do. Go back to cooking together and being sure to put our food on his plate. Absolutely. And I would also recommend go and do that catch your comments exercise with your husband and see, because there might still be some lingering things that you do say at a meal. It'll really draw your attention to it. And that level of being in your own mind of, oh, yes, I am saying that thing, or, oh, yes, I am doing that thing. And that actually is pressure. You'll be able to catch yourself doing that now because that's something that you're in control of 100%. So if your daughter's like my child's refusing to eat foods, we'll eat steak here and there, pancakes, pizza. But anytime you introduce a new food, I'm waiting for the next part of your. She throws them if you introduce something new. Yeah, so that's your child's way of saying, no, I'm not going to eat this. And that is not always, I don't know your specific situation, but that's usually a sign that the child has been pressured to eat before. And it is their way of saying, absolutely not. You are not going to force me to eat that. I'm not putting that in my mouth. I'm going to throw it on the floor because that's the way I know that you're not going to force me to eat it. Kids that get more picky as they get older instead of getting more open-minded, what do you do? He's 8. Okay, so I'm starting work with a client in just a couple of minutes. I've got this like my last 2 minutes that I can be on the live. Her daughter is 9, and that's exactly where they're at. A lot of parents think, oh, this will just pass. I had one parent say, oh, when my child is 3, they'll be more willing to try things. And I'm in my head like, that's just not usually the way it happens. There's no like magical thing where your child just immediately stops being picky. Like it doesn't happen that way. The reason being because, again, you're the parent and you're in control of so many things. Like communication is a big part of this. That's something that you control. That has nothing to do with your child growing out of it. It has to do with you making some changes, which is sort of a tough pill to swallow. But let it be that you're feeling empowered because you can change the way you communicate. So for your 8-year-old who is not open-minded, again, this is communication. The mum that I'm going to be working with now, mum and dad, we're going to be talking today. I'm going to be gathering, our first call is a lot of information gathering for me so I can kind of determine where there is still pressure and how we can remove that. But in the next few sessions, we're going to be working on how do we cultivate a more open-minded mindset, because oftentimes children who are picky, they are highly rigid in not just food and also a lot of other areas of their life. I've come to really notice that kind of correlation. So we need to work on their flexibility in many other areas of their life as well, because that will help them with the food area. Like, obviously, I'm helping you with the food area, but as I'm giving you these things to talk about, ways to change the way you communicate, you're going to use that in other aspects of their life too. Maggie, one more quick question. I'm going to finish on this one. My husband doesn't really like blueberries, for example. Once Dad to try one, he really doesn't want to. I'm pretty sure I did a live, or I can't remember if it was a live or it might have been I think it might have just been a short video that was about what to do when you don't actually love the food yourself, which is okay. It's unreasonable for any adult to love every food, just like it's unreasonable that every child loves every food. So it's okay to lean in and say, like, hey, this is not my favorite fruit, but I'm going to give it a try, and we'll do it together, and we can talk about our experience together. As long as you're not saying things like, this is disgusting, this is gross, I'm not eating this, that's just snotty texture. That's not a great way of going about it. But being a little bit more neutral, like, that's the inside of that is quite soft, and I find the texture of that a little bit difficult. Or I really like the outside being quite crisp, but I find the inside is not my favorite texture. So being very neutral about it and not being judgmental, there's just sharing your experience. All right, if you have more questions, feel free to send me a DM. If you are interested in taking my course, the link is in my bio. It's called Mealtimes Without Meltdowns. It's a really great place to get you started. I'm going to be having a free bonus video when you buy the course in the month of April. If you're interested and you buy it before, I need to put the link in the automated email that you get afterwards. If you buy it this month, I'll make sure that I send you that link as well. So yeah, there'll be a special bonus video about communication, about eating meals and snacks at school. And yeah, thanks for being here on this live, and I hope you have a great day. All right, bye.